Awesome. We'll get started. Thank you all for joining us today. Really, what we'll focus on is kind of the roadmap for the next 90 days, as this is essentially the last webinar in our series. We want to kind of highlight some of the critical tools, timelines, and thought processes I'd be deploying to succeed over the next 90 days. So again, this content will be a little bit more wide funnel. And when I say wide funnel, I mean it's trying to apply to multitude of businesses. So, we'll try to tackle some of these specifics around clusters, but as you recognize locally, there are hundreds of different businesses. So we want to kind of provide this in the most layman language as possible so you could apply to your own business as well. We really, of course, encourage specific questions, both at the end of the conversation and then also directly to a few emails so we can help kind of, solve for your needs as well. But hopefully, this will cover kind of the majority of needs. We're going to take kind of an 80-20 principle here, meaning that we'll focus on that first 80% of essential knowledge, as that's kind of the best we could do in terms of the breadth. And then really that last 20% is where you're going to have to fine tune for your specific needs. So let's kind of get started and talk through kind of what that looks like and what you need to be doing for the next 90 days. Um, so most of you already know my background, but in short, what I want to share is that I'm doing the same thing for every business in my portfolio. Really the last 45 days has been scrambled, try to get to a place of just a basic baseline. And now, I had to get in the trenches, et cetera, but now I have to be able to scale myself. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set every company for success for the next 90 days on their own, so that I only have to spend maybe 5% of my time on each individual business and allow the entire portfolio to grow. So I'm going to try applying similar thoughts and languages here to kind of the entire city of Folsom and kind of all the businesses here on this call is, how can I help you guys navigate for those 90 days? And that's kind of the thesis and thought process there. And just really quickly, since it's the last seminar, I just want to call out the other partners that are a part of this, both Granite City Co-working and the Greater Folsom Partnership. Huge shout out to both of them of putting this series together very on a short timeline, and more importantly, you're doing this at no cost to everyone out here. We really wanted to ensure that we could have a lot of value, and we've already received a huge amount of positive response. We've almost at over 400 total signups on this webinar. We've had thousands of views as well too. So we just hope that we can continue the conversation, and with these partners, they're really getting in the trenches alongside all of our local businesses today. So just want to share a huge thank you to both Granite City Co-working and Greater Folsom Partnership. So let's kind of dive in. Really, I'm going to give you my estimate on the timeline with COVID-19. Again, you could talk to 10 or 20 different people and they'll give you different estimates. I try to use mine based on facts and evidence on science, so I will try calling that out where it is. But just want to note that this timeline is not 100% guaranteed. It's just what are my best expectations based off the information we have today. So, in short, it's important to understand the first core factor here, and it's that California has not peaked yet. The great thing about California is that we've done a great job getting in lockdown. I commend Governor Gavin Newsom on being one of the first to really deploy this. It actually starts with both Santa Clara County and San Francisco County, were actually the two local counties to first go into lockdown. And that kind of trickled into both Gavin Newsom going into a state lockdown really earlier in this shelter in place statement before mostly almost any other major state outside of New York. So with that, it's important to recognize that although we have limited the growth and the data on behalf of California looks really good, we still haven't peaked. And that means, what does that mean when I say we haven't peaked? We haven't hit the full threshold of total number of deaths per day in California. That's one of the primary metrics here in the state. There's a few other metrics as well too, including like intubations, number of people hospitalized, number of people infected. But death is kind of the primary delta factor or data point that people are utilizing to see whether or not this is peak. So it's recognizing, what the spread rate is. And with California, we're probably still about 2 to 4 weeks away from that peak. What that means then is that, we should be expecting shelter at home at a minimum for 4 to 8 weeks in California, meaning that the current economic situation that we're seeing will be probably extended for another couple of months. And I'll also tell you, in the worst case scenario, I could see this extended for 4 to 6 months. right? And it's specifically understanding that around coronavirus and COVID, it's this element that if we do not have a primary vaccine available anytime soon, we are still susceptible of COVID launching back up if we say turn on public transportation and other modes of physical contact. So even though we might see, say, the peak declining in the next 4 to 8 weeks, we can still see a shelter in place statement for 4 to 6 months. And that means that could be all the way through the end of 2020. So this is just something that you need to share as a timeline so you could be very realistic around your business, because there are a few individuals I've talked to who are assuming this could be done in 4 weeks and we'll all get back to that same level of revenue, when in reality, that's just not going to be the case. Do I know exactly when everything turns on? No, but I really want us to understand the best and worst case scenarios, because that's the only way you could effectively build for your business as well. So with that, what does that mean? Well, we're going to see the primary trend of digital will continue to grow. Web and mobile interactions will thrive. What's actually interesting here, if you're really focused on a digital landscape as well, we're actually seeing web usage, like working on computers and PCs, way higher. And actually, mobile is kind of flattened, because if we're all stuck in home, we're actually utilizing this device with the largest screen, and that tends to be computers for most people as well. So what's actually interesting here is that although mobile apps are great, and I'd recommend people to be working on the mobile landscape, it's actually your website that's more important, as that's now becoming the primary landing page and interaction page for most businesses. And again, this will correlate, of course, to investing into your digital website, which we've called out multiple times, right? Next, what we have to understand is that federal and state support will be limited from a capital perspective, right? I would essentially lower expectations of any external capital support moving forward. If you've been a part of our PPP webinars and the SBA loans webinars, you'll probably recognize that PPP is already exhausted. Essentially, almost 80 to 90% of major organizations, banking institutions, financial institutions are no longer taking PPP loans. There are still a couple. So if you haven't got your PPP loan in, I would recommend reaching out to Wells Fargo if you do have an existing relationship. They did note to us yesterday that they are still taking on a few more applications as well. But it's recognizing that maybe there's another 100 to 250 billion dollars in stimulus package coming through. That number sounds like a lot, but meaningfully, it's going to be deployed very minimally to especially a lot of small businesses. So if you're a business specifically under 20 to 30 employees, you should not be expecting significant federal and state support based off what is already out there, right? So you should assume that there's not another additional influx of capital outside of the PPP loans, right? For you, you have to start looking at alternative sources of revenue or alternative sources of funding. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but like the one that calls out the best, if you believe your business can survive and has the metrics to do so, is the EIDL loans or the EIDL loans from the SBA, which are the economic disaster loans. So again, a lot of people are expecting a bailout. Just recognize, like, small businesses are going to get the short end of the stick, even if there is more capital coming through. So don't be dependent on this, for your business to succeed. Next, and last and most importantly here, right, when we think through 2020, we need to recognize that sales and revenue will not return to normal levels until 2021. Right? Even if a shelter in place stops within the next 4 to 8 weeks, right? And ends in 4 to 8 weeks, the entire consumer customer profile, business profile have drastically changed. How we spend and will spend this year has already been impacted based off what's happened in the last 90 days as well, right? Considering that most, US, consumers, right? Over 58% of US consumers are already in debt before COVID had already started. You could only assume that that debt has piled on even more, considering that most people are out of work. We're seeing the largest unemployment rate of all time, right? Up to almost 7 to 8 million now reported. What you have to recognize is that even if COVID has stopped and we see no spread rate, right? The spread rate somehow goes to zero. The exact purchase habits will not return until 2021. And that's a best case scenario, right? So it's just recognizing this is that, 2020 has no real clarity moving forward. And it's really important you take that as a realistic condition to all of your business modeling moving forward, right? I'm hoping for the best. A lot of my businesses are drastically impacted by this, but I will always face reality when it comes to making critical decisions around my business. And this is the framework that I'm using. There might be other insight you have, but I just want to share where I'm coming from. And this will kind of hopefully share about what you do next over the next 90 days with this kind of lens. So with that kind of being stated, right, we need to talk through kind of the three core areas here, and that's going to be sales, operations, and HR. How do you reposition all of these accordingly for your respective business to succeed over the next 90 days, right? So, with this lens of recognizing that everything has changed, how do you optimize accordingly and ensure that you could, survive? So with sales, it really comes down to everything that everyone needs to do for their respective business is now understand your target customer and how their purchasing decisions have changed, right? Briefly, we've touched about this in previous webinars about restaurants, right? Your current customer is going to be less frequent, right? And will probably be willing to purchase more in bulk or larger for families, right? That is a different trend for that business, right? Separately, right, if you're looking at maybe a real estate business, you should be understanding how previous recessions, how people have purchased and what have the trends been there. What has happened to property values? What has happened to the primary metrics like time to close, right? The larger issues you're gonna have is, are banking institutions willing to finance loans? What are their conditions for financing as well? So again, think through this on your specific business and your customer. How have all these changed, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit as well at the end about the general profile of customers. But as we talked about, right, that you're going to see less, more risk aversion here, right? People are going to be willing to take less risks on behalf of their own spend or their business's spend. So think through your model on your target customer and how the current landscape has changed, right? What is their willingness to, buy? What is their, do you even have a value that they're willing to purchase today? And the great thing is correlate it with the data you have, because you now have 45 days or at least 30 days of meaningful data of how your customers are now interacting with your business. Use your last 30 days of data to build a new customer profile. Next, right now, there's this term called signal to noise ratio, right? And the idea is that there's a lot of noise digitally and online because everyone is just trying to scream and share what they're doing because they believe it's the only medium that is out there. And because of that, the signal is low. That means that, there's just so much noise there. People aren't really reading or understanding or valuing the content that's being put out. It's a lot to sift through, organize through, and even just digest. So the biggest important thing here is that for the future of sales, right, you need to ensure that you're only sharing useful content to your targets that solves a very specific problem. So, if you're going to put out any type of one-pager documentation, a blog post, like it should be very specific to that user's needs and that customer journey's needs, right? So if your customer, let's use that real estate example again, right? Like, hey, customers that are looking to sell their homes, these are the 10 facts you need to know most about to sell your home for the best value and in the fastest time, right? And you should only be sending that to people who you think would be selling homes. Then same thing, you might want to flip that content to like who's buying homes, etc., right? So think through what is that useful content and try, rising above the noise to provide a meaningful signal beacon on behalf of you and your brand. Next, project your trends and adjust for your specific business. So again, use the last 30 days of data on your business to better understand, what your business looks like today and how it will look like moving forward, because you now have a meaningful baseline. Next, go back to the trends of previous recessions for your market, as I noted before. So you have the '08 recession is a really good element to be able to correlate some of the data to understand what happened to markets then, what happened to customer behaviors then. Next, like look at people who are projecting trends now, like just simple Google searches on your market, like medical Google trends, right? Or like cost trends and stuff like that for your specific market. You can start seeing low-level insight on what that looks like over the landscape and how it develops. Everything's still dynamic, but you need to start utilizing new data, new metrics, new trends to really be able to project anything out. If you're using anything based off pre-COVID-19 data, right? Or like, early 2019 data, late 2019 data to project your business, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, right? You are not going to get real metrics. You're not going to get real projections. You're not going to build for a reality. So you have to recognize everything's changed, and you either need to use new clean data adjusted for the current world, or leverage projected trend data from larger sources and apply for your own sub-business as well. Lastly on this slide here is like, switch your sales channels from offline to online. There is still some arbitrage on offline, and when I say that is, billboards still work. You could still see people are moving cars, right? Are still driving on our roads locally here in Folsom, but traffic is way down. So I wouldn't be putting a lot of money into billboards, right, in general. But in short, right, most of your entire sales channel should be online, right? You need to understand how to capture emails. You need to understand how to do text messages. Digital, right, really is important here. Being able to communicate on the fly and building an optimized, CRM system, right? Especially if you do have outbound sales. So, we'll talk about this in the next few slides. Is there's a lot of technical debt that small businesses here have. And what I mean by that is that a lot of local businesses, especially brick and mortar businesses, tend not to invest into meaningful technical tools. It's always been in the back of their mind, we'll do it later. Well, now is that later, right? Now is the time you have to pay off that technical debt and start adding digital tools to your operational structure. And we'll talk about them in the next couple of slides here. Outside of that, on the future of sales, to help your business now, when we talked about this a little bit as well, is sell in advance, right? Sell credits or delayed offerings, right? Like, cool, if you're a home appraiser, sell discounted home appraisals now, right? Be able to say right now you can get a 40% off a home appraisal if you buy now, and it's good for the next 48 months or 24 months, whatever that time window is, right? Same thing, auto repairs or auto cleaning, same thing. You can sell stuff in advance, buy $1,000 credit on any repair service for a 20% discount, right? So you'll get, for $1,000 of credit work, you'll get it for $800. So try to think through what is the ways that you can sell in advance. For retail and restaurants, like the best thing you can offer is a gift card that can only be used in store. So say if you are a in-store location that is closed, but you still have digital offerings, offer them, hey, buy $100 in-store credit card. So when we open back up, you can use it and we'll give you a 20 to 30% discount, because those are just massive margins. So try to figure out how your business can sell in advance here to be able to bring cash now onto your books. Because again, survive, survive, survive. Next. Evaluate your distribution models and your supply chains. So this is probably for a little bit larger businesses here, but really what you want to understand is this term pivoting. Now is the time to start pivoting your business for near-term opportunities, because that is what the requirement is. So maybe you've been exclusively only selling like B2C, right? Let's use B2C means business to customer or to consumer. In this case, right, restaurants tends to be that, right? You are selling directly to a customer most of the time. Since your customer is now infrequent, is going to most likely not be buying as much, you probably want to recognize like, man, maybe I should pivot and try a B2B offering, a business to business offering, meaning that how do I support catering a little bit more and find the right businesses that are still alive? So we talked about this in our restaurant webinar, but it was the idea of like, cool, healthcare, government, certain organizations are still full and up and running. How do you offer to them? Or, how do you offer your perks as a restaurant to a business to support their at-work home employees who also still need to eat? And this is, again, something you would never prioritize in a traditional realistic world of 2019, right? Or it'd be a lower priority. But now you have to recognize, you have to consider these shifts, right? On the flip side, right, if you are business to business, right, you might be a real estate company selling directly to business business organizations for your technical services. Is there a way to now offer that, a partial value of your entire service to just direct customers? What would that look like? Can you piece out a part of your product that can now go direct to consumers, right, for a cheaper price point, right? And again, it's hard to do the hypotheticals here, but it's more getting the framework to think through, cool, what are my entire offerings? What am I positioning to B2B? What am I positioning to B2C? Is there any way I could cross these over and create something new? Because you should just be rapidly testing and making sure that you're finding the closest product market fit based off what you value. And again, you also need to piece this back to, what does the new consumer or customer look like? What does the new business profile look like? So, if you have an offering that makes it, businesses would be willing to buy because it helps them preserve capital or it helps them, reduce risk, great, you should try offering that up. So again, explore what this looks like for your business and see whether or not you can do tests. And the best way you do tests is you call 3 or 4 direct partners, warm network contacts that you already have, and pitch this live to them. Just get their feedback, right? The way I look at it is I call it the rule of 5. I try to pitch 5 warm contacts within my network on a new idea. If I cannot get one of them to convert, right, or at least meaningfully go down the exploration of this, it is probably an idea worth killing, right? But if I do get one person or more to convert, it's an idea worth doubling down on. And I go the next step. And I try to utilize kind of touch points on knowing, am I getting better at this? So, say if I get 1 out of 5, I then need to make sure that I, on the next cycle, get 2 out of 5 to convert, right? To a certain extent. And again, that's loose, right? If the conversion of 1 out of 5 means that one person who converts is millions of dollars, it doesn't matter about quantity of people who convert, right? It is more about the total revenue that comes in. So again, it's a little bit different for every business, but that's the rough framework I use in order to really apply new ideas. It's essentially creative experimentation. So if you remember the scientific methodology process, right? You put out an hypothesis, you put out an experiment, you test, you collect the results, you evaluate the results. If the results are good, double down again. If the results are bad, kick out. So that's kind of the general thesis I use for startups, restaurants, everything. So yeah, just think through that. Next is consider new markets, right? This kind of applies to that same structure and what those minor pivots are. A lot of people tend to have really interesting offerings that can be used for other use cases. So, for example, I was working with this technology company and I was just, they've created this really interesting tool on their mobile app where you can video chat with anyone. And the tool was initially just built for doing retail sales. It was helping, say AT&T sales reps be better at selling, to prospective customers. So that was kind of what the one-to-one tool was built. But we went through this kind of creative experimentation mode around it, and we recognized, cool, the base fundamentals of what they have in this tool is that it allowed one-to-one communication. What are all the other markets that one-to-one video communication is needed? So we played around and created a dating app idea, right? Dating is really weird right now in the world of COVID. It's a totally different process, but thinking through video dating, how can video dating replace the first date, the first physical date was an interesting idea. We were thinking through other elements cool, one-to-one coaching. Can you use this tool to give therapists and psychiatrists the ability now to communicate to their clients in a one-to-one coaching manner because it was needed. And the great thing is that we took 80% of their tech and only shifted 20% of the customer-facing element, right? The branding, a little bit of tools, and we were essentially able to create 5 new business model ideas out of it. So again, if you could take the core value you offer and look at how you could position it for different markets, it could be a very interesting opportunity. And of course, right, this is much easier for digital technology companies than it is for direct retail or offering and services. But just think through, what are the other markets you offer value to? And then lastly, in the future of sales, the first and like the most bare minimum thing you should be doing right now is building a community and position yourself as a thought leader in your market. So if you're a medical professional, real estate professional, you run a specific type of restaurant, right? You should aim to be that thought leader in the market over the next 90 days by sharing insightful information, by communicating with all the right customers in that market, and by bringing them together, because that's what everyone needs right now. I mean, it's essentially what a lot of the ethos of the Compass webinar series is we just wanted a way for our entire community to engage with one another. And this has really allowed us to really take it to another level where, I'm now able to provide meaningful advice to a few different verticals. Restaurants is now kind of an area where certain people view me as a thought leader just based off my restaurant series, even though it traditionally wasn't a major strength of mine, but I've tried to make that. So similarly, like try being the real estate leader, digital leader of your entire industry right now, locally here in Folsom, right? Or whatever your business may be, you should aim to be that thought leader, direct to customer goods, retail goods, automotive, whatever it may be, you have an opportunity. That is the weird blank slate canvas that COVID has provided us now. Right? You could be a trainer, right? And be that digital trainer. Like who is that in this area? I don't know. So again, if you could think of that as an opportunity, you can really kind of layer your sales, because once you become a thought leader, the sales come, right? That's the other interesting thing about this. Once people respect and trust you in terms of your leadership within that vertical, the sales conversion tends to be a lot easier, almost natural on its own. People will just send you contacts, right? And that's kind of the other great element here. So try playing it on a double-edged manner, right? Of course, be aggressive in targeting your sales and your opportunities, but more importantly, right, build yourself as that beacon so people come to you. And if you could do that, you have a huge opportunity not only to extend your brand digitally during COVID, but this extends permanently post-COVID, right? Because digital is still the primary medium people are connecting with businesses as well. So again, just recognize that's the opportunity when we think through sales. So this is just a really short element of some really quick tactics you can take in order to really scale your business to the next level on the sales side for the next 90 days. So let's kind of shift gears really quickly and talk about like, okay, how do you run your business over the next 90 days? How do you optimize operations? And again, this is very critical when I talk to tech businesses, right? Burn rate is one of the most important metrics. Burn rate means how much money does your business cost per month, right? And our key has been how do we lower those costs as much as possible? But the other thing is that you want to extend runway. Runway means how much time do you have to survive assuming no capital comes in, right? And again, these are the two vector points you need because this essentially gives you your baseline of survival. And with that, you need to optimize both of them to the maximum ability. So the first way to do, of course, is reduce costs. The second way to do that is, of course, bring in revenue or capital. So we'll talk through both of those on how you can optimize your operations accordingly to scale. So like in short, and most of you have already done this, right? Operations for a new world, you need to be tactical and streamline your process and cut costs like as much as you can, wherever you can. I think there are still a lot of people holding on to a certain extent, and you need to recognize that again, because we're looking at 4 to 8 weeks in our best case scenario, you should be utilizing that as your minimum threshold to see, can you even survive until that point? And then start looking at models for that 4 to 6 month scenario as well. And that's kind of where I say evaluate from the worst case scenario, not just the best. This is the biggest issue I've seen here locally with businesses that I worked and communicated with. They're always trying to be hopeful. And you should be hopeful at a personal level, but you should be honestly very pessimistic at a business level, right? When it means that you should be building from that worst case scenario, right? Because you need to be ready for anything. Those are the best entrepreneurs. Those are the best business leaders. Those are the best managers, is they recognize all the scenarios that can play out and they're ready for the worst, right? And that's essentially what I want to call out here. Next, right, you need to know your clear cost hurdle, right? We've talked about this in a few of our earlier webinars, but you need to know what is the total amount of revenue you need to make per month to break even. right? What is that cost hurdle structure? And then because you have 30 days of data at a minimum, you need to be asking yourself, can I realistically be hitting this cost hurdle based on the current trajectory, right? Based off where we're at, is this high enough? Is this too low? What can occur? Because essentially what you have to understand is that as this entire world unfolds and changes, you're not going to be able to go from 0 to 100 overnight, right? And what I mean by that is that if you're a business that had 50 employees and you laid off 30 of them or 40 of them, right? Let's say you're 50 and you laid off 40. You're not bringing all 40 of those employees back in any given day or week, right? It will be a process of onboarding them on. So what you need to do is not only do you need to know your clear cost hurdle today, you need to understand cool, when can I start increasing my cost hurdles to bring on more employees, and what does that ROI look like? Because you'll probably be bringing on 2 or 3 employees every few weeks, depending on how the business trajectory moves forward. So you need to build for that as well. But that also means you need to build an employee ROI model, especially if you're very sales oriented and revenue oriented. Right now, your core team should just be infrastructure, where most of the leadership is doing sales, right? That's really essentially your sweat equity as an owner is doing all the hard sales stuff. And then from there, what you need to then do is have a clear model of understanding how much revenue does a salesperson need to generate for them to be break even or profitable, right? That is a cost of acquisition to LTV model, a CAC to LTV, or a sales to ROI model as well. But you need to have these numbers very clearly understood before you even bring on a new employee to your business or a previous employee back onto your business. Is that if I hire them at $2,000 per month cost, can they net me $2,000 or more in new revenue? And if you do not have a clear answer for that, you should not be bringing that employee back on. So you should not only know your entire cost hurdle for your business, but you need to know your clear cost hurdle on a per employee basis as well too. Next, right, you need to optimize for high value capital wherever you can. You should know these options today. Venture capital is one that's probably not approachable for most people here, so I wouldn't put it high on the list. But you should look at debt, credit, EIDL, and you should have already applied for the PPP loans or be ready to apply for the PPP loans when they come in. Essentially, you should be applying for all of these, right? Because you don't have to take them, right, when they are approved. You just need to have that optionality now. And the reason I say this is that, again, none of us know our timeline. None of us know our window. So the basic thing I can say is that if the current trend continues for 6 months, can your business survive? If the answer is no, and it should be no for most of you, you should be looking at as many alternative capital sources so that you can make that decision if it ever gets to that worst case scenario. Because if it does get there and you haven't done any of this work yet, you're probably shit out of luck. That's the honest truth about it, right? Just for example, when the PPP loans came out, the Paycheck Protection Program, which was one of the more valuable loans because they were essentially all forgiven if utilized correctly. The entire system got overloaded in the first 24 hours. Applications essentially closed within 48 hours, right? A lot of businesses, and especially financial institutions, are not incentivized to put out huge amounts of capital for small businesses. So you have to do even more work as a small business to access that. And that's the honest, blunt truth I can give to each and every one of you. A stimulus plan that comes at a federal level is not here to protect small businesses, right? It is here to protect corporations more or less, right? That is where the primary capital is going to. So if you could recognize that as a small business, you need to understand there is more of a hustle and more of a, in the trenches attitude needed just to survive. Being a small business owner is brutal. And it's even more brutal during this time. So you have to be willing to take on all of that pressure, all of these lack of resources just to survive. So essentially, optimize for all capital sources. I mean, this also means looking at credit cards. Know which credit cards are available right now with 0 interest for 18 months, right? Or something like that. That gives you breathing room. It doesn't mean you have to apply for it yet. Just know where everything is, and then you can make better decisions as the business metrics showcase for your specific, organization as well. And if you're a larger business and if you are bringing in revenue, if you haven't been massively impacted, because as weird as COVID is for 90% of businesses who've been negatively impacted, 10% of businesses have actually seen a boomerang up, meaning that they're doing incredibly well. For example, this platform that we're using right now, Zoom, is doing amazing, right? They have 10x their entire user base because the entire world's conditions have had to require them to move online. Microsoft Teams, Slack, Google Docs, Google Classroom, all these websites have all experienced like 10x growth, like order of magnitude growth. And similar, if you had a digital offering, you tend to do well. So like, think of all the digital delivery services are doing well. So like Uber transportation is doing really bad. Uber Eats, food delivery, is doing really well. So recognize that, if you're one of these businesses that is in the boomerang up, support your at-home employees with meaningful perks, right? Like try giving them any value to help make their day a little bit easier. That could be giving them like, digital meditation classes, sending them food, sending them gift baskets. If you're on that larger side, please do this. Like, I think, if I were Intel, I would absolutely be doing this. Intel's revenues are still growing, right? In a lot of their cases, they haven't been as drastically hit. So, again, if you're in this case, great. Just wanted to call that out there on the operations side. Next, and this is probably the one that most of you are not going to like hearing much about, but it's most critical. It is the idea of paying off technical debt. Right now is the best time to increase your technical capacity. As a small business owner, I recognize learning and trying to build for tech is one of the more harder things to do, but it is the most essential. You've already taken like a few of the right steps by getting onto Zoom, by getting onto other elements that are probably digital and technical, but you need to now make that essential tools list for your business to thrive, assuming that we're in a digital only landscape for 6 months. More importantly, I will tell you this, that all the tools I've listed here, and there's another 100 tools I can call out, but the tools here, if you implement them now, they will not only help you over the next 6 months, more importantly, they will help you for your business in an enduring run with both physical, digital, and direct retail. So essentially for you guys, I would recommend is that if there have been technical tools that you have not been willing to incorporate yet, it's time to start paying off that technical debt. So again, for you to communicate with your customers and your partners and your team, you should be looking at Zoom for basic video. If you're a big fan of Google Hangouts works just as well. There's a few other digital tools out there, but you need to start committing and investing into that. Next, like you need to understand like how do you communicate via text is also more important. So again, most people tend to use text messaging for that, when in reality, there are amazing technical tools that solve for that. One is called Slack. I highly recommend Slack. I use Slack for every business. I use it for digital technology startups that are 1 employee all the way up to thousands of employees. I use it for restaurants as well, right? That are 5 people restaurants to 100 people restaurants. Everyone uses that I communicate and work with directly Slack. Slack allows for seamless conversation, group conversations, and keeps your team connected in a remote scenario, right? These are essentially what we're all working with today. Also, if you're a fan of Google Suite is brilliant. It's a little bit in terms of cost. So the great thing about Zoom and Slack, you can use them essentially for free for your primary needs right now. Google Suite does have a cost. It's between $6 to $10 per user, but it gives you everything. It gives you, not only Gmail, but their calendar. They have Google Docs, Google Spreadsheet. It's essentially the entire same Microsoft Office suite, but done online. So, Microsoft Office works great too. I actually should have put it there. Office or Microsoft 365, I believe is now what it's called. That's also a great set of tools. And as well, if you're on Microsoft, the alternative to Slack is something called Teams, Microsoft Teams, also really good. So check out either of those. But again, you should start investing. Next is that if you have any product management requirements, and again, this is a little bit more digital, but if you have any requirements where you have multiple team members working on the same singular project, you should be utilizing product management tools in a digital manner. The two most popular from a non-technical perspective would be Asana and Trello. And what these are the ways to actually track progress of team members, assign tasks to team members, and be able to see everything through a very simple and singular flow. I would recommend Asana over everything else because it's the most wide funnel. I use Asana not only for, say, businesses, I also use it for my family. I use it for my grocery list. I use it for a lot of other interesting elements too. A lot of flexibility there. If you're a deeply technical team, and have a lot of software or primarily deploying software, I would recommend Jira, Jira, or Confluence for these type of product management tools. Those are more oriented for bugs, QA, and that element. But I expect most of us would fall into the Asana and Trello. Just check them out. Asana is free as well to try for small teams. You could kind of play around with it, and they do a really great job. Separately, then start thinking through around your business's needs of what technical tools are necessary in order for you to still complete business as ever before. So, if you require signatures, you should be looking at DocuSign, right? Like very simple, very elemental. Most of you have already been utilizing this, but DocuSign solves a lot of those needs as well too, to be able to have verifiable digital signatures that are bound by legal law, right? By legal standards. Similarly, if you need to share large files, right? Dropbox is great. We use Dropbox here at the Compass series to be able to deploy, how you download the slides, etc. It's a great way to exchange files as well. And you can utilize this. Google Suite has this with something called Google Drive. iCloud has this with Apple. There are a few other resources for sure. But if you're not utilizing any of those yet, Dropbox is probably the most customer friendly to utilize. So there's hundreds of tools. What you need to understand are what I would recommend here is that I would be going through your own operations flow and identify the tasks that are necessary for your business to succeed, and then evaluate the specific technical tools for that. So, I've noted communication, I've noted task management, I've noted signatures, I've noted file sharing, but you might have hundreds of other needs, right? You might need to have a requirement where people can view your documents, right? There's something called DocSend, where you can send, viewable documents for anyone just with a link. You might need to send out a lot of links. So you might need to use a URL shortener like Bitly. Again, hundreds of things. So call out your list and see what is necessary for your own dynamic flow. And you'll see hundreds of tools that are built just for that and automated. Outside of that, if you're really into advanced cool stuff, like the idea of automation, I didn't put it here, but I should have. I really want to call out Zapier, Z-A-P-I-E-R. It's an IFTTT. Again, I'm sorry for all these names. But what these are essentially automated tool processes. It's called if this, then that, meaning that you can create automated actions based off something that's happening with your customers. So say if you have a customer sign up, you could create an automated action to do a follow-up email, and you could just set that up on Zapier. You don't have to do anything. So you could actually remove a lot of that, middleman work and kind of that busy work by utilizing these automated flows. Zapier really, if deployed correctly, can remove 2 or 3, core team members' tasks off their plate, right? And it really saves them time to be more efficient and allows you to allocate quite a bit as well too. Zapier is primarily free to get started. And the great thing as well is that they have a program where they'll give you their premium tools for free as a small business for 90 days as well too. So again, check these out and build for your needs, but start investing in this stuff. If you can get in the trenches and start building for your own business's needs, you'll not only help for the current near term, but you will definitely endure a lot stronger in the long term. Same thing, like if you're a retail store, you should be utilizing some type of software that's tracking your sales and analytics, right? I recommend Square. If you haven't, if you don't have a point of sale system, Square is by far one of my favorites out there. But again, there's hundreds out. So please utilize and optimize for your own business as well. So again, this is a lot, but really what you want to understand is that, take on technical debt wherever you can on the operations side, and really, really know your cost structure for both the best and worst case scenario. If you do that, you're going to give your business a significantly better chance of success, especially through 2020. I'm just going to quickly talk through like what your HR process needs to be, because there's just more gaps here that are important to call out. Most of you have already done a lot of the hard work around HR, but in short, like you need to really start communicating survival to your staff, right, at all costs. So if you still have employees that aren't founders or owners, like motivate your remaining employees at all costs. Let them know that you're communicating survival at every element, right? If they can be frugal or smarter about a decision, incentivize for them to share that as well. Like, how would they improve processes? You should be having that conversation as well, especially if it's someone you trust, right? Really, the team members you have left on for your business right now are the ones you probably significantly trust or have been able to showcase strong responsibility. So have that conversation with them, right? How can they improve the processes? What would they like to see better ROI of their time? Next, like this is the biggest gap, and I think most people have already got hit hard here, is the knowledge transfer. When you have to drastically cut people, what you also have to recognize is that although you're doing it to, of course, save costs, one of the biggest things that happens is the knowledge gap, right? All these people who've left have taken their critical knowledge around their business and have essentially not shared it back for either the existing team members or future team members. So there's probably a lot of times where your existing team members that are left post this are saying like, I don't even know how to do this, or what should I be doing? Similarly, when you then try to hire new team members and this knowledge is gone, you're going to have a huge, huge amount of struggle just onboarding these people to be efficient. So one thing you need to understand is you need to transfer your knowledge quickly, right? So you need to ensure you have handoff meetings. If you did not have handoff meetings, when I say handoff meetings, if you let someone go, that person should have been talking to the person who's now taking on their tasks, right? If that did not happen, you should now reach out to that employee and incentivize them to have a handoff meeting if there's critical information that they can provide. Just tell them, hey, for an hour or 2 hours of your time, we'll pay you $50 to $100. Whatever is that right compensation structure, do it for your right business, compensate them for it, but get that information. It's not only for them to benefit yourself, but it's also to benefit them if they ever come back or if you need to hire new employees. Make sure you don't have this huge knowledge gap, because it means that it's going to be an element that you will struggle to scale. You're just adding more obstacles and hurdles to get back to your previous revenue standards, right? So then make sure you're documenting essential knowledge. This is missing in most SMBs. Most small businesses don't have any documentation. It's all knowledge kept in your head. That's awful, right? Because if that's the case, it's super hard to disseminate that information to everyone that's necessary. So start writing this stuff, right? A Word doc, it doesn't matter. Even handwriting notes is a great way, but digital formats are better because it's easier to share. Next, like create clear templates on how you want this knowledge to be documented, right? Create your guidelines and standards, right? So like, you should be writing, a general template would be is like, who's writing this? What's their role, right? What's their responsibilities? And what are all the right resources and tasks in order? But of course, create the templates for your specific business, right? If you're a restaurant, right, you should be creating an open and closing template, right? For people who are opening the store, here's your checklist. Here's, for the people who are closing your store, here's your checklist, right? If you have any sales, right, how do you onboard new customers with your existing flow? What are all the tools you're utilizing, right? How do you upsell a customer? Build all of this in, right, so that you can, A, give yourself better chances of success, but B, when you have the ability to bring velocity back in, this is clearly documented and you kind of get rid of all that hard work, right? If you get in the trenches now, everything else will flow a lot better, right? And this will then optimize that future onboarding too. So remember, think through your knowledge, think through how that knowledge is transferred, and understand where the gaps are right now. Digitize, document, and be able to share, right? If you can do those three things, you're in a much better shape now. And this is something every owner or founder of their business should be doing as well. Lastly, like consolidate your redundancies, right? Like most people, when they cut, their staff, they're doing it out of need. but they really didn't do the extra next step as well in terms of asking, are the existing roles of the people who are still at my company still right? Or do I need to be giving them essentially new job specs? And the answer is yes, you should be giving them new job specs, right? Sure, maybe 75 or 80% of what they're doing is still essential, but there's that 20 to 25% that you need to start building gaps for. And you need to do that hard work as a business owner to start solving for those gaps. Because if you don't, there's going to be stuff that either falls to the holes, or you're going to see numerous times, I've already seen this, people doing the same thing, right? Just redundancies, 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 because nobody knows exactly what they're supposed to and not supposed to do. And again, the faster and better you can do this at the start, the more velocity, efficiency you're going to get. So really, for every one of your key employees, you should be evaluating their key tasks and responsibilities. A very simple task to do this is that you do this as an exercise is you talk to your direct report and you be like, hey, I'm going to write a list of what I think you should be doing. Can you write a list of what you should be doing and prioritize accordingly? Get these two, match them up together, talk through and see where the discrepancies are. Just get aligned, right? Simple alignment is what you need right now. And that's a very easy task. I would recommend to do this with every single employee that's on, that's on your staff right now. But at least at a minimum, do it with the key executives, direct reports that are critical to your business, right? So make sure that people are aligned and understand what's going on so you could be optimizing your entire resources as well. All right, like just really quickly, since we've kind of talked about these last two, like communicating with customers, like again, if you haven't done this stuff, you should be investing into it now. Have a clear mission and vision statement. Like, why do you exist as a business? Like, do you have that clear ethos? And what is your responsibility on how you're helping the community? Next, like share a personal narrative from your business leaders to your existing customers. If you haven't done this already, right, like do this now. As a CEO, operator, owner, whatever your title is, you should be sending a personalized narrative to all your existing high value partners. And you should be telling them what you're doing, how you're supporting, and give them existing resources as well. So, if you already have 5 or 10 of your clients are a bulk of your revenue, you should have already reached out and tailored this, and you should be giving them specific tailored support as well too. More importantly, right, share this narrative to as many people as you can in a tailored manner if you have the time. Right now you have the time. You should be saying a personal line. Don't do cookie cutter template emails. I think people are way too much are doing that. Right now, like I look at my email inbox every stupid morning, I have some cookie cutter email from 100 different partners, right? So I'm not going to read through all of those. But if I see something a little bit more tailored, I'm more incentivized to walk through that content as well. Next, like extend and update your digital touch points to share how you're navigating in a post-COVID world. Just show and share with your partners, right, how you're adapting right now, right? So, this should be on every digital touch point you have, your website, your digital messaging, your digital voicemail, your social media accounts, whatever it may be. All of these need to be updated today. And you should be sharing what all the changes you've made and how you're operating moving forward. Have you closed your retail store? Are you still open? What are your limited hours? What services are you still offering? What are you not offering? All of this should be very clear, and you should be updating this across all your digital touch points here as well. Next, you want to, if you can, and we talked about this earlier about building community, it's like you should be building a recurring newsletter and incentivizing customers to join. Find a reason for people to sign up and give them authentic communication once a week, once a month, whatever it may be based off the right cadence. And you should incentivize by saying hey, sign up, you'll get a discount code or something to that extent. Try getting as many people there because that's the easiest way to build a community right now. And again, this might not even need to be just customers. It can be like-minded professionals. If you want to be a thought leader in real estate, get all your real estate professionals together and share, build a roundtable of real estate professionals, a roundtable of automotive professionals, whatever it may be. Figure out a way that you could be that rallying cry for the people in need, right? And the better you do that, the stronger your brand is and the stronger your success will be in terms of conversions of sales. As talked about, extend your thought leadership. The biggest value you have to offer is yourself, right? If you're especially an owner of your business, you did this because you believed you had something to offer to your community. And again, most of us, kind of confuse it with our product, but really it's you, right? It's you sharing that value. So you should continue to deliver overwhelming value to your target customer base in whatever way that may be. So how do you do that? Well, like, cool, allow direct access to your knowledge. Let people like touch and interact with you in whatever digital manner they can. Direct email, create a phone hotline number, offer free 15-minute consultations to your target customers or digital meetings to help them navigate. Create blog posts, create video content, do a live webinar like this, whatever it may be. Find a way for people to access you. You are now the brand, right, in this digital world. And a way for them to interact with you will allow you to, A, not only be a better thought leader, but B, really understand the needs of your customer. This is where you could have that customer conversation. You could then maybe from this, you'll be able to understand what are the opportunities moving forward. One of the strongest things I did was free 15-minute digital audio calls or video webinars, video calls like this for any of my target customers for a few of my businesses. And from that, not only did I end up converting quite a few for sales, but I ended up getting meaningful insight on how to update my offerings to support their needs. Because I asked them very simple questions like, what's the biggest problem you're dealing with today? What would be the biggest help you would ask for right now? Right? What would you change about what we're offering to you today? What would you value in our offering if you could touch this today? Right? And by just asking those core questions, we were able to navigate really quickly on what people A, valued, B, wanted to still pay for, and C, needed the most help for, right? And if you get those 3 points understood, you can then optimize and position an offering that's built just for that. And it will lead to really strong conversion as well too. Lastly, right, it's just like this element of like support their needs, right? As I talk through everything, it's all for them, right? You need to understand those needs very clearly and provide that support. So if you can, right, maybe it's not your ability to extend it, have your team members do that. Have, 10% of the time for your staff helping support the community in some meaningful way with your services. If you can do that, A, you're going to get that thought leadership element, and B, right, you're going to get sales through. So again, just interesting ways to be able to position yourself now. And this is a huge opportunity to do so, because even with this 30 days in, specifically as we deal with it, say in Folsom, the digital thought leadership is still a large gap, right? Like if you look at who's actually providing you meaningful evidence or information and content, it's still pretty lacking, right? So the element now needs to be is like, can I fill that void on behalf of my customer? That is your opportunity now and how you can navigate those next 90 days. We're going to close really quickly as we're kind of getting to the end. It's just like, I really want to highlight, we're looking at a new world, and that means a new customer profile. So what does that new customer profile look like, and how do we make those changes accordingly? So understanding the new user is really simple. Like, customers are cost conscious more than ever, right? They have less capital, so they're going to be very picky on what they spend and how they spend it. They're now essentially all going to bare essentials, right? We're going to grocery hoarding is really where primary spend is happening right now. But entertainment spend is still up because people are bored, right? So if we look at entertainment, it's a lot of digital entertainment up and to the right. So it's thinking like Netflix, Disney Plus just announced 50 million subscribers for their platform in 5 months. Mobile gaming is really up and to the right. And of course, digital viewing of videos as well. So you're seeing that there's a change there. Next is like businesses are massively risk averse right now, right? You should not be positioning offerings that are either high capital costs with unexpected ROI returns. Like that's just never gonna work for them. If you're gonna sell anything to a business, it is patching up holes or gaps in their existing business, or offering them a way to navigate with clear ROI returns, meaning that they're only paying you if revenue comes in, right? That's what a lot of people are looking for, is that similar threshold. Very few people want to pay anything upfront, right? So you need to recognize all your cost models, need to remove that, or need to really provide overwhelming value on that front. The next thing you have to understand is that people are only incentivized to pay if money comes in, right? Because if we're in cost reduction, right, the only willingness we're able to put a check out is if we know there's a clear ROI. So make sure you're communicating that calculus with every partner you communicate with moving forward. Everyone is reducing investment. If you're on the R&D side of the equation, I am very sorry. because you're not going to have a good time for these next 6 months, right? People are less likely to bring on new partners, right? They are sticking with existing partners. So what does that mean for you? Focus on warm contacts, right? It's way easier to upsell existing partners and customers than it is to retain or grab a new customer. So if you're optimizing your current sales process, you need to work within your warm community, the ones you've already built for, where trust is an element that will help them be willing to make a transaction or exchange with you. Next, right, like understanding the user, the economy will ramp up slowly in 2020. You're going to see, regardless of where COVID-19 shelter in place stops, spend is ruined for this industry, right? It's just absolutely ruined. So you have to understand businesses and consumers. Quarterly reports are wiped out. Projections are wiped out. Savings are wiped out. With that, you need to understand everything will be slowing down. There's, most, especially if you're in retail, I mean, most businesses, we all know Thanksgiving to Christmas is one of the best. Do not expect similar numbers this year during Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? You just have to understand. What is that delta? I do not. If I had to guess right now, I'm going to say it's closer to like 50% or lower, right, of what your previous last year was. That'd be my blind guess right now based off just some numbers, right? It's pretty far away. But because of that, you have to recognize, right, there's just still a large gap. And, how do you correlate that? Well, the other stuff you have to understand is look at the stimulus plans. They're not really there for individuals or small businesses. The average individual is getting $1,200 right now. That doesn't do much when the economy's been shut down of revenue for 3 to 6 months. More importantly, the average small business is only getting about 20 to 25% at best. Again, that doesn't really help for spending to increase. So when you see these kind of numbers, it's important to recognize you're going to see a lot of cratering to a certain extent. You need to just survive. Last, right, or next, right, trust and true partnership matter a lot more. So again, your network, anywhere you could extend your trust a lot better. Recognize everyone is lost and everyone is seeking guidance, right? So if you could offer that, it could be a lot more valuable to your customer and your customer base as well. So aside from that, it looks like there's sorry, there we go. Sorry about that. So everything else is like everyone is lost and seeks guidance, right? So essentially you need to understand here is that with people, they need you to help them navigate. So if you can be trustworthy, you can help them understand their decisions. It could be something really important. I'm sorry. It looks like, did no one hear anything for the last 5 minutes? Okay, yikes. So let me start again on understanding the new user, I guess, really quickly. I think that's where I'll start at the top. I apologize. I don't see chat up as much. I try to focus on this, but here, let's jump all the way to the top. So understanding the new user. Recognize, right, customers are cost conscious more than ever, right? With the current customer, they're less likely to spend on anything new. They're only willing to spend on the best resources and tools they've utilized in the past 12 months. So recognize that, offering new things that they never bought before might be a hard sell unless it's solving a really clear gap, right? And that's what you need to be acknowledging on what that customer behavior looks like. This also applies to businesses. Businesses are massively risk averse right now. If you're doing anything on the research and development side or anything that has speculative revenue, it's clearly recognizing at this point that businesses are not willing to spend on that today. What you need to do is you need to solve, rather for their ceiling, you need to solve for the floor of that business. Meaning that how do you patch up their existing gaps, right? What are the areas that they are not really succeeding at, but they need it to run better? If you can solve those gaps for them, you will then have that opportunity to upsell or be able to share some type of new revenue stream with them as well. Next, like everyone is reducing investments, right? Investments will continue to be slow, and you want to expect this all the way for until 2020. So what does that mean, right? Well, in short, what you have to understand is that regardless of where COVID-19's impact is, the entire consumer spend is broken and the entire business spend is broken through this year, right? All of our quarterly reports for a private or public business and projections are out the window, right? All of the consumer savings have been erased, right? All of the consumer spending habits are still unknown and will be very low throughout this entire year. So what does that mean? Well, for most businesses and including, most of my portfolio, December, Thanksgiving to Christmas is that amazing window, or even Thanksgiving to New Year. That's really that amazing 45-day window. Although, that will always be where spend does increase, we need to understand it will not hit the levels of 2019. What will it actually hit? No one really knows, right? Like my blind projection is that it will hit 50% of the numbers of what we did in 2019, right? That's my expectation for 2020. You'll get better data points for that, but the reason I'm right now looking at that is that it's two major elements. First, the stimulus plan that we have is not supporting primarily consumers or small and medium businesses, right? The average consumer or customer is getting a $1,200 check right now. That's nothing when it comes to spend during, consumer spending habits over the next 9 months. More importantly, small and medium businesses are getting a fraction of their actual revenue, cost that they need to bear for the next 6 months, right? On average, based off how the first $350 billion has been deployed, really less than 25% of businesses are actually going to have any meaningful coverage. That's massive gap, massive gap. So we have to recognize that these are going to have long-term impacts to the economy and long-term impacts to our businesses as well. So with this, it means really on your end, you need to focus on warm networks. Trust and true partnership matter more than ever. It's going to be a lot easier upselling or reselling to existing customers than it is to bring on new customers, right? New customers, when they are cost conscious, are looking for probably only reputable brands they worked with, they're less willing to experiment with their capital, right? It doesn't mean that they won't spend new dollars. There's still gaps they need to move forward towards, but it's recognizing on your end, especially if you're a business that tends to have sales over $100 on average, in the thousands of dollars, say if you're a service-based business, you need to focus on your existing customers. That is where I start with, and that's where I'd be building offerings for. How do you reach out to them and tailor them? So one of the best advice I can give you is go to your existing customer base and tranche them and bucket them into individual clusters, right? So, you run an automotive repair shop. You probably want to build a cluster around, cool, what are all the automotive dealerships I work with who are large one-off whale customers who have over 10 cars, who are, partnered local businesses I work with. And then I create unique offerings for each of them, right? If I run a jewelry business, same thing, right? Like, who are the people buying and what are those types of clusters, right? And if I could cluster them the best of my ability, I would then create unique offerings for those existing users. So, hey, this is what we're offering today for this package, this package, this package, and make it tailored. The better you tailor, the better your conversion is going to be. So in short, right, everyone is lost and everyone seeks guidance, right? So this is your opportunity to be a thought leader, but also be that beacon for people to come to you. So when everyone is lost, they do need that guidance to be able to understand what that next step is. So everything I've been doing in this Compass series is something you should be doing on your own business. It's helping them navigate the next step, that 0 to 1. How do you do that on behalf of every customer, every partner, every employee within your network? And do that in a human manner, right? Be aware of the human condition, right? Like, try optimizing for their needs, not just for your business's needs, right? Can those match up? That's when an ideal relationship truly exists. Because one of the largest issues I see here is like, you don't use this for exploitation, right? Like, to be honest, if you're doing a discount code, don't put the word COVID in your discount code. I think that's totally incorrect, and it ignores the actual scenario with the world today. So again, be thoughtful on the human condition and recognize, like, we're a world that is fractured and is in pain. Your offering should be something that heals one of those pains, right? And I know that sounds weird, like, how does real estate heal anything, right? Well, you know what? It all comes down, and a little bit of psychology here, it all comes down to the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not familiar with this, go look it up. And it really just talks about the fundamental truths of what we need in our lives to truly be happy. And on that baseline, right, it's like food and shelter and water, right? Well, great, like shelter is one of those requirements. So if you're a real estate business, how do you tap into that shelter requirement as well, right? Like in my case, I'm right now looking to buy a home. Oh my God, I still need to figure this out. I'm right now Airbnb everywhere. So it's one of my requirement needs. Sure, I'm not every customer, but I'm now a unique customer in that manner to a certain extent. So just recognize what those needs are and how you essentially apply for that. Because if you could solve and provide some good to this world and good to a need to an individual customer, A, not only are you doing good, but B, you're gonna really be able to solve for a sale as well too. So this is kind of the new climate that we're dealing with, and it's understanding this new user for your business moving forward. So with that kind of being said, I know we kind of went over time. Sorry for repeating that, and sorry for not being on mute faster. I'll have that on tap next time. But in short, really just wanted to call out here, if you have any specific questions around your needs, please reach out to teamrecovery@folsompartners.com. We'd also love to hear specifically what else would you like to see. The Folsom Partners are working really hard to build out new content. They're here to be your partner for everything moving forward, and we recognize this will still occur for another couple of months. We'd love to hear what other support you'd like. Now, this was just a first experimental series here with Compass. We hope this offered meaningful value, but we want to continue to offer that more. So any ideas you have, any feedback you'd have, that would be great. Separately, if you have any questions for me around your specific business, feel free to reach out to partners@thetribe.group. Also, for us, what we're going to do as well is we're going to send out to everyone who signed up to the Compass webinar series a quick just survey to ask, A, what was helpful, what was not, so we could tailor this a little bit better. We'll also give you an exclusive invite to our network as well moving forward. We'll A, have all this content, but also we'll be launching one-off content, every couple of weeks as well, based off the needs of the market too. So essentially, for all of you here today, what we recognize and what we're really looking for value is that, what do you need? How do we continue to offer that support? And please feel free to share that. Separately, when you get that survey, please just take 2 minutes of your time. We just want to get the direct feedback on what is helpful. That'll come out probably on Monday as well. So, you don't have to worry about it over this weekend. But that just really helps us understand how we solve for this community. Transparently, this is very new for me. Most of my advice is given to more technology-based startups. So I'm trying to figure out those gaps and making sure that I can solve for small and business needs. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us today. This was incredibly exciting to be able to share this information and communicate with every one of you there. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out directly at this email or the Folsom Recovery email as well too.